A special thank you to Jen Hollowell and Company for sponsoring this week's episode. Welcome to the place where we inspire growth through powerful stories of transformation. I am your host and artist, Jessica James, and this is the I Empower podcast. Oh my gosh, do I have an episode for you? Okay, when I went back to edit this podcast, I was immediately taken back to those emotions that I received last year when I interviewed today's guest. If I'm being 100% honest with you right now, I got emotional, and today we are talking to the empowering Jamila, who is the creator of the Embodied Leadership Project. She is sharing her experience with us and what led her to creating the space to facilitate healing through horses. I know, it's incredible, right? She shares with us how these majestic creatures can help us heal and how they are teaching us to have a more conscious relationship with ourselves and our own power. I'm telling you right now, buckle up, because this is one powerful episode. Let's jump right to it. Thank you, Jamila, for being on today. I'm so excited to talk to you about your story and some incredible work that you're doing. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. And I did a little research before I had you come on today on your website, and I'm just my mind is blown. My mind is blown. And you know and you are going to explain to me in more detail what it is that you're doing, but basically what the take back that I got is that you were facilitating healing through horses or equines. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is so incredible. So tell me what it is that you do. Tell me all about your project. You are the Embodied Leadership Project.
Yeah, I have an organization called the Embodied Leadership Project. And yeah, it's thank you for all that you just said. And thank you for having me here. Yes. It feels always like a blessing to get to talk about it, because I get to kind of reflect on the immense power. And it's cool that your podcast is called what it's called, because that really is what draws me to the work that I'm involved in, working with horses who really are embodiments of spiritual and physical power. And I get to explore with them what it's like and what it means to have a more conscious relationship with my own power and my own privilege, and also the ways that power has been used against me, and to get to have those dialogues with the more than human world and with these beings who are incredibly intelligent and hold a vision for alignment and right relationship that's just in a more expanded paradigm than what I believe humans are accessing on our own when we are in these colonized mindsets and disconnected from our larger family and relation that are, living in the plant world and the animal world and the world and the spirits of nature. So it's truly incredible.
It sounds incredible. And then you get to do this every day was just, it's a beautiful thing. So tell me what led you to do this, and what exactly is this work that you're doing?
Well, it's fun. I'm really glad to be here, because I've been reflecting on it a little bit more recently. And I was like, oh, this will be a great opportunity for me to just go through this story again, because some new aspects showed up, like some things came full circle that feel really profound. And so it all started, I'm a dancer, and I had for a long time a journey in dance where I was really in my body. I went to an incredible program as a young person called Destiny Art Center in Oakland, California. That's where I grew up. It was very focused on, expression and justice and telling stories and connecting across difference. And so I had a lot of fun there. I felt connected. I felt included, and I felt like it was safe to be in my body. And so I decided, like, oh, I love dance. I want to do it with my life. But then as I started to study it in the professional world, all of the aspects and the values that I appreciated started to disappear. It wasn't about me and my personal story. It wasn't about connection necessarily. The music that I really loved started to change. The joy left. And I was like, okay, this is not feeling good. And I had some really hard experiences. And I started to shift into learning more about somatics and about trauma. And it was that I think that shift was very powerful for me because I had a lot of trauma in my body, and previously dance in that community way had been a space of safety and of connection, of healing. And so when those components disappeared, I was left with a lot of discomfort in my physical body and a lot of challenges with being present. And so I'm just saying all that because I was doing a lot of research around somatics and movement and really intentionally focusing on emotion and healing and trauma. And I ended up going to a dance workshop where I met this woman, and I noticed about her that she had the most profound quality of attention. And I had grown up around a lot of people who really cared about feelings and who were really present and really like down to listen. There was something about this woman that was so just striking and beautiful. When I stood in front of her, I felt like I was the only one there, and she could, like, any feeling that I had, anything that I needed to share, she was listening to my whole body, and it felt like my soul. And I was like, whoa. Her name turned out to be Lori Halliday. And I was like, I was at the conference, I was going to interview someone else, and I was like, can I interview you? Like, I'm so curious. How did you learn how to listen this profoundly? And she said, oh, it's because I have a herd of 10 horses. And I was like, what? And I had previously had a lot of scary experiences with horses, so I was not into horses. And I actually was like, yeah, whatever, Lori, like that. I'm curious about you. How did you learn? Right. She's like, don't really trust me. It's my horse. And so I ended up going to study with her, and I had gotten a grant to, and I remember, this is the part that has come full circle. I remember a mentor of mine saying, like, I want to support you to get some money to go study and continue your work. And so we were talking, and I was like, there's this thing about like the quality of attention. I'm noticing at that point I was already into healing and deep listening practices and somatics. And I was like, I'm into being really present, but there's a whole other level of a quality of attention that I'm noticing about this person. And I want to get into that. Like, what is that? I'm so curious. So I remember just getting support, getting the grant, going to study with Lori. And the first thing that was very powerful about the process is that we stepped into the round pen together. She had one of her horses, Bugsy. She's like, I noticed Bugsy is presenting himself to like be interested to work with us. And so I was in there with them, and Lori was very safe. So I was like, you know what? Honestly, I just have to be honest. Like, I feel weird about this. Like, I'm here to do this, like whatever session we're going to do. But these horses are so majestic. They're so beautiful. And all I can notice is the fences. Like, it just feels weird that we can come in here, lock the door. I get to leave, lock them in. Like, they're huge. They're powerful. They're beautiful. Who am I to just come in here and like come get a session with them as they're locked in this place?
Right.
And it was so beautiful because she actually started to cry, and she let out some tears and was so heartfelt and was like, I think about this every day. And she let me know, these are rescues, and they have a truly beautiful life there. They live in a beautiful ranch, and they get to be outside. They're not in stalls, and unless it's like a heavy, crazy storm, they only go outside.
Right.
So she let me know that, but she gave me permission. She said, I would not ignore those feelings, and I cannot ignore those feelings. And so from that moment, she gave me immediately the permission to follow my feelings and the permission to begin to have a political conversation around horses. She's a woman of color. I'm a woman of color. So there was this kind of location that I had never had before to start to address power and power dynamics and control paradigms. And I'm also biracial, so I have an adjacency. I have a parent who's white, and so I have an adjacency and a closeness to white supremacy and white privilege. And there's a lot of complexity in what I've experienced and the oppressions I experience, and also the immense privilege I have in many areas of my life. And so to have this beautiful mentor of mine like open the gates for me to start connecting with around these incredible animals in this way was just very blessed. So then in that session, she was letting me know, oh, as you're saying this, do you notice that Bugsy, when you said that, he took a deep sigh, or, oh, do you notice his eyes are softening, or his head just dropped? And she was like, he can feel and hear what you're saying. He's resonating right now. Or he'd walk away, and he'd come back right when something came up. So she was showing me how he was listening and how we were actually all three of us having a conversation. It was so, and when you have those experiences, this is what is so incredible, especially in equine assisted learning and paradigms where they're focusing on who the horse is more than just like a, I don't know, we say animal like there's something lesser about their intelligence. But when you're in a paradigm where they're focusing on the horse as a partner and a collaborator and a teacher, it's so beautiful to be in those moments where you notice the horse contributing, because they sense energy, they can feel your feelings, and then they show it to you in their body. So they are this beautiful bridge between the non-physical and physical reality. And it's like, you don't have to be spiritual. It's not a thing that's like, ooh, you're into some stuff. Everyone, like, yeah, that's why horses are named. Everyone's like, oh my God, like I had this amazing experience with the horse that stayed with me my whole life. So they kind of like break down paradigms around everything and just bring us into the more subtle realm.
Oh my gosh.
So it's okay if I keep going. This story is kind of like this.
Yeah, please. I mean, I'm like on the edge of my seat here. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what's next? What's happening next? This is so intriguing to me.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. Because I'm like, the first part was so filled. Like my first introduction was just so filled with information that it's like,
yeah, it's so important though. Like this, the you know, every bit of it is, I'm sure, has a very important part of your story. So yes, it really was an initiation, really, and Lori held a big part in that, in the way that she held me and was able to follow the flow. And so so one thing she let me know, she talked about this principle called congruence, which is when your feelings and your thoughts and your words are in alignment, and your actions, your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions and your feelings. I mean, I said that a lot of different ways. Your feelings, your thoughts, and your actions are all in alignment. So what you're knowing deep inside, and what your body knows, and what you're doing and what you're saying are all lined up. And you're not she said you can go around a horse, you know, and you can be feeling really anxious and scared, and you can pretend like, oh, hey buddy, like, and put on a voice. They're going to steal your whole body. They can sense our blood pressure. They can sense our breath, our heart rate. They can, you know, their bellies are so big, and all those neurons in their gut, they have, like, you know, we have so many. I think there's more neurons in the gut than there are even in the spinal cord or something. There's it's crazy.
It's crazy. And they have huge bellies, and they're feeling everything. So that it's like the quality of resonance, like they're tuned in. They can feel the vibrations of the earth, of each other. So they're feeling. So when you're not congruent, they can sense it, and they're prey animals. So they're like, okay, something's a little off here. It's not necessarily relaxing for them.
Right.
So she said, when you notice that you become congruent, they will start to settle. Their nervous system will become regulated, and so will yours, because you're becoming true. So she also said, you know, if you send them pictures from your heart or your mind, they can also receive images. So she left me with that information. And then the next morning, it's like 6 a.m. I woke up early. She was in this beautiful area, and I was sitting in the sunlight, and it was just so still. And I had a lot of fear around horses. So I was sitting pretty far away. They were behind the fence in their paddock. And I was sitting there for about 20, 25 minutes. And suddenly I just felt like I had some reservation. So I was there. I felt good. But the way I felt about being close to a horse, there was some like anxiety that would come up. Mm-hmm. I felt that feeling completely melt away. And there was, I swear, it felt like a beautiful thread just started to pull me. Like it was the softest draw that just drew me towards her horse, who is named Pepper, who was standing behind the fence. And I just felt myself kind of like magnetized towards him, and my whole body just kind of floated towards him. I stopped about 10 feet away, and I was just in this really beautiful state. And I felt like, okay, this is a good place to stop. Waited there for about 10 minutes, just really still. All the horses were just standing, so beautiful. And then happened again. And I wasn't, it was like an embodied longing or action that just unfolded. I just felt myself moving towards him, and it's very beautiful. And then that same feeling of being like deeply drawn started to happen on an emotional level. And I felt all of this grief begin to rise out of me. And I started to cry. And I remembered what Lori said, you can share pictures. So I was like, oh, I understood that meant that he was listening to me on many levels. And obviously he was connected to me because he had been pulling me towards him. And so the feeling started to flow, and I started to share with him some images of what I was feeling, and just understanding in that moment that I was actually being listened to was so incredible. And so then he started to, after about like 15 minutes of this, he started to make some moves, and I was like, okay, I guess he's going to leave, I was kind of sad. And then he actually just laid down.
Wow.
And then he went to sleep.
Oh my
And I was like, okay, talk about relaxation like that. I mean, this means like there is some serious congruence happening, and he wants to be close to me, and it's like soothing to him to be close to me when I'm being true, even though these feelings are some of the deepest grief that I truly hadn't even felt with any other human. It felt like a quality of listening that I'd never experienced before. And I had, like I said before, I'd been in some very powerful healing listening spaces with incredible human healers and human people who love listening. So I was like, wow, this is really special. And then suddenly everything became very still. My grief kind of had like washed through, and there was this immense, beautiful stillness. And then out of the stillness, like my mind was so clear, I felt this statement arise from him, like in the space between us. And he said, all of the feelings that you had are completely allowed here in the space between us. But this stillness, this is who I am, and this is who you are. And it's because of this stillness that those feelings can move and unfold and then dissolve. And don't forget that like this is who you and who I really am. And I was like, oh. I was like, okay, that was the moment, I was really introduced and invited to study with horses as spiritual teachers. And I was hooked. I was like, cool. I don't know what this is, but I'm down with it. Like, this is beautiful.
Doing it.
Yes. So that's how I got in. That was my.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And so with what you're doing with the people that you're helping, you facilitate this process where you are, right? So that someone else could come and have this experience of healing with horses.
Well, what's really interesting is that what began to unfold was, so for then a couple years, because Lori lives in California and I'm from California, but I'm in Massachusetts. So I came back to Massachusetts, and for a couple of years, I actually wasn't around horses physically, and I got obsessed with them. She recommended these books, these two particular books by Carolyn Resnick called Naked Liberty, and by Linda Kohanev called The Tao of Equus. And those, if you're like, oh, I just want to get in on like who are horses as these beautiful beings, these women, like they go in on it. So I was reading those books, and I was doing a lot of like conversations about horses and integrating them into my art and my dance practices. And then I eventually started to get connected to horses. Again, they came in really strong, and I met my partner now who's comes from a horse family, and he really opened space for me to start to spend time with horses out in beautiful fields where they had so much space and I could be far away because I was still scared.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is that I started to develop these deep meditations with them that weren't really about touching or being super close. And things would happen. I'd find books laying around about like the different ways that horses communicate through breath. And so then I'd start to come into my breathing, and then suddenly like we would get close. We'd end up like nose to nose sharing breath. And it would just be like these magical things that were unfolding where the horses were really teaching me. And I was learning just different ways to work with my body and my mind to get into a state of meditation where I could have these powerful feelings of connection unfold. So right now, I both work with horses in person, and there's all these magical stories of how they just kept coming in and like really opening space for me to work with them. And honestly, I feel like serve their desire to serve humanity and to bring us love and spaces to connect and heal. But I'm working a lot online, actually, of working with meditation, because some of the most powerful experiences that happened after what happened. I'd say the second most powerful experience that happened after what happened with Pepper was not in person. It was after I'd had a very special bond with two horses here. I was having, I was going through a lot of healing in my own trauma journey that was really hard, and I was feeling really bad. I was in a very dark place. I was suffering a lot, and I remember being in my car.
If you're looking to buy or sell your home this year, I've got the girl for you. Jennifer Hollowell is the mastermind behind Jen Hollowell and Company and the sponsor of this week's episode. I have had the pleasure of getting to know Jen, and let me tell you, she is one of the most passionate and knowledgeable real estate agents I have ever met. With over 15 years of experience, Jen has helped countless families find their dream homes, and I am so grateful she is a part of this project. Jen has a background in marketing and customer service, so she knows exactly how to make the buying and selling process smooth and enjoyable for her clients. And with an eye for art and architecture, Jen is able to bring a unique perspective to each and every transaction. So if you're thinking about buying or selling your home, I highly recommend you reach out to Jen. And once again, a big thank you to Jen with Jen Hollowell and Company for sponsoring this week's episode.
Essentially, I was just like in so much pain, and it was interesting because I was, working with a lot. I was doing some deep therapy, but I was in so much pain. And these two horses showed up in my heart, like their energy and their image showed up in my heart and took away like a good amount of that pain, gave me the courage and the energy and the desire to just, keep going. And in that moment, I felt a level of faith develop between me and the horses that was so deep, because it felt like they were there in a space where no one else could really access, where I couldn't find connection with any human. They were able to see me there and find me there, and they were actually checking for me there. Like I was like, it almost was like they were thinking of me, and they could find me multidimensionally in my car. And it was, and it's, again, it's like these things are so spiritual, and at the same time, it was just so practical. Like I wasn't thinking about them. I wasn't having any positive thoughts. They came to me, and I was truly, from then on, I began to really look for that. When things became really hard, I would call on them, and they'd always show up and bring like a positive thought or a lot of times clearing like some of the density and the energy. Or sometimes when I go to sleep, if I was feeling very afraid, I'd imagine them with me, and it would feel like there was this safety and protection and connection, and I could go to sleep. And so I started getting really, really passionate. I've been involved in yoga my whole life, and passionate about using my experience with embodied practices and mindfulness practices to help people get into a state of receptivity and presence, and develop this bond with these horses from wherever they are. Because horses are, it's hard to access them. And sometimes you can be in the grace like I was with Lori, or people are with me, or where you'll find a person who can help facilitate this, and you happen to be in that area. But it truly doesn't have to even happen. And it can happen. I actually learned a lot from watching videos online with people who work with horses like this, and having powerful experiences through the computer. And so I just got very drawn towards what I believe is the horse's desire to connect with us, and the ability to just work in any medium to access our heart and connect. And so I'm working in person and online. Yeah.
That's incredible. I'm getting like cold chills, as you're telling me this, because I always it's like the same thing that I told Caitlin during our interview. I told her that I felt like after having that experience with her and the work that she's doing, and now listening to your story, and the more people that I talk to and the more people that I listen to, and I'm hearing these incredible, connective with energy, and how, I felt like I told her, I was like, I feel like I walked around for 30 years in a shell. And it wasn't until I started this project and having this connection with people and realizing that oh my gosh, there's so much more to our existence and our life and the way that the world works, that we just have to open ourselves up to and tap into that, and the healing that can be received from it, and just the knowledge, and then just really truly actually living and discovering what the purpose of this life is. And, it's incredible to me. And one of the things that you mentioned that I thought was interesting, that you had a fear of horses. And I connect with that because I've always said I have a love for all animals and I love horses, but they scare me. They are, because they are so big. And so I think it's like you said, that powerful presence that they have. But it's interesting to me that you were able to kind of work through that and open yourself up to have this experience with them.
Yeah, it truly feels like grace, because the circumstances and the people that showed up to support that process, like my partner, Lori as my mentor, and then my mentor now, whose name is Farah Dijonette, and my partner's mom also, and these are all my partner's Black, his mom is Black, Farah is Black. These are all like horsewomen and horse people of color, which feels really beautiful, and also who are opening space to move into. For me, there was this permission where I don't ride the horses, and my horse right now, he's been through a lot of trauma. People can ride him, but our connection is very much based on the kind of healing and therapeutic and spiritual aspect. And so having these people around me who are really supporting the spaciousness to go into relationship with these beings who are so often viewed as kind of almost objects to be ridden. And obviously, people have very, very beautiful relationships, but there's this kind of, I feel like, a popular assumption that the way that you relate to a horse is to get on their back. And that's that. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's many people who relate to horses in more expansive ways than that. But to have so many people support me to say, no, you can develop this really powerful way of life that has nothing to do with riding, and is so rich, and then open space to really perceive this being and this friend and this ally and this teacher as just that, someone who I'm walking beside and who's walking beside me and is sharing their gifts with me. And that can unfold into riding as it needs to, or it doesn't have to, but it's not rooted in that desire or that agenda. So that was really powerful and helped me move through the fear, because there wasn't really pressure to do anything, because it was kind of like, we're just going to be with them.
I think that's awesome. Do you think that I think back to indigenous cultures who had relationships with animals like this. I feel like, and I don't know a lot because I haven't done a lot of research, but when I think about, indigenous cultures that used horses, they rode them, they used them to help work. I feel like they probably had a better connection with these creatures than what we do now, because maybe, just through time and society, we've shifted it into this thing. Like you said, a lot of times they're viewed as objects or, ways to make money or things like that. Why do you think that that's important, that we look differently at these creatures than just something like that?
Yeah, I mean, when you say that, I'm thinking of the work of this incredible horsewoman, Kelsey Dale John. She is indigenous. She's Dene, and she you can look her up online. She's done a bunch of. She's a academic and a horsewoman, and I'm sure she has a lot of other things that she does, but she's done some incredible writing and speaking. There's videos of her online, and she talks about this. And I got to talk to her, actually. It was really beautiful. And I got to go to a workshop she led. And it was so beautiful because she brought up some of she does equine assisted learning with, and she said when she works with people of color, I think she said women of color, with the horses in equine assisted learning, that a lot of the political stuff does come up there as well. Yeah. And there's a space to talk about these things, and confinement and freedom and politics in this emotional space where there's a space to feel and also to reconnect with the more than human world. And she talked about the fence. She wrote a whole paper about the fences. So I feel like there's this kind of contemporary space of, I guess, decolonization in the tender action of turning toward nature herself as a listener, as a friend, as a guide, as an intelligence that is coming through in many ways. And the horses are such a beautiful vehicle of that, because they're just really good at what they do. So, yeah, I think that it is an act of, my sense is that, so when I was thinking, the full circle moment that I had was that when we're doing trauma work, or we're healing trauma, and when we experience like relational violence or relational trauma, so it doesn't even necessarily have to be from an oppressive force. It can be just losing someone that we love, or having to deal with loss, or it can be because of violence, which there's so much of attempted genocide, colonization, forced displacement from land, war, relational violence that's both intimate in our families and in our communities, and then larger in our culture, that are perpetuating harm and systems of harm. What happens when we experience that is that we become fractured, and aspects of ourselves become incredibly separated. And, that's already so painful for the human system, because we're designed for connection, just like horses. They live in herds. They're designed to be together. And so are we. And so when we have these relational experiences that leave us in experiences of separation, those parts are so tender, and they're so vulnerable. And what I'm kind of like into right now is like, as I look back and reflect on what the horses are offering, is that they can meet us in this quiet space inside, where we maybe don't even have to talk, and most of the times you don't have to speak, and they can witness that. They can be there, and they can let you know that they hear you and they feel you. And so I feel that there's these parts of us are so tender that there's a quality of attention that is actually more subtle than what humans can give one another. And so there's a layer of healing that I feel like a lot of us, and I'm curious to see as things go on, just what the horses are offering in terms of this level of awakening and healing, where there's many of us who've been doing our healing work. We've been going to therapy, we've been doing spiritual work, or whatever it is that we've had the grace to do, and we're still struggling. There's still an aspect that's like, it's heavy. This world is intense. It sometimes feels like you're just struggling to stay afloat, or kind of in a wasteland, and there's just so much going on. And I feel like the horses are offering this paradigm where it's like, there's parts of us that still have not been able to integrate, because they're needing a quality of attention that's far more subtle than the human consciousness can give at this point. And so while that's both kind of like I feel like there's just this whole realm of the unconscious that hasn't been digested and related to. And it's beautiful, actually, because what I believe is being asked of us is to turn back toward the more than human world. And that's going to heal that incredible relational trauma of colonization that affects everyone. And it truly transcends all of our differences, because we're actually connecting across the difference of species, and we're connecting across a frequency difference, because we're so much in a 3D reality, and we're used to what we can see and what we can hear. And we start to work with beings like horses who exist multidimensionally. They're going to bring us into starting to understand how to perceive the subtle, which starts with emotion, honestly. It's subtle. And people talk about energy, and it's like, oh, what is that? Like, our feelings are subtle energy. And as we start to go deeper into that, we get guided into just these more subtle aspects that we might not be able to see, but we can feel. So I think that they are offering us pathways into, and I appreciate my positionality and who has shown up for me, because when I see people of color in leadership with horses around these issues, it's like, yeah, we're talking about the spiritual aspect and the spiritual tools to become more sensitive, so we can heal the fractured aspects of ourselves. But when we can name that the incredible relational violence that has happened due to enslavement paradigms and sexual violence that is so immense, that to even kind of bring those topics up cause us all to dissociate. So when we can have people who can hold those positions and the tenderness of it and not leave that out, then those parts of us that have experienced that, it can become normalized to start to kind of acknowledge them, maybe in the quietness of our heart and in the relationship with a horse, and slowly in safe containers with people who have integrated, begin to bring that into words in a way that's the nervous system can handle and doesn't get shocked and we get jacked out of our bodies.
Yeah.
And we can't have the conversation.
Oh
So it's a deep energy healing process that is calling us back into relationship with the earth. And then, from there, I believe, and this is happening, I believe, on the earth in many, many ways, but, the goal is to come back into right relationship, to return what has been stolen, to be able to heal on a level that's really real and includes the people who are being marginalized and the voices that are being silenced on every level. It's about centering those, and to do that with someone who doesn't even speak in verbal language is just a really powerful way to do that, because it's gonna catch those parts that are silenced. They're not working in the paradigms that we're using.
Right. I mean, oh my God, I don't even know what to say after that, because it's so mind blowing, but just opening up ourselves to receiving this type of information. But it makes so much sense to me. It's incredible. And I think that we don't give nature and creatures like this enough credit, because they're on a whole nother level, and they're like, you guys got it wrong. Let me help you out a little bit.
Yeah. It's so much, what I hear you saying too, is just, there's so much love there, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have to want it, and just starting to discern and kind of get clear about that, and then following those threads of where we find connection. Really, that's what I think so many aspects of us are longing for, to return into connection, and to know that that's there in a visceral, felt way. That's not some idea, because I think you start to call in, and I will just, make a prayer for every single being that is separated, that there is a moment of connection that's opening a doorway in which to feel it and to know it's possible. And that's what happened to me when the horses came to me in the car. Is like, oh, that part of me didn't know that connection was even available or possible. And it was too ashamed, too afraid, too disgusted with myself, to, really ashamed and terrified to ever try to attempt to connect to a human. So it wasn't even, I almost didn't even know what it was there. So when the horses start to open up a safe place for connection, or, you go out into nature, whatever beautiful energy shows up for you, that makes it available to know that you can come back into wholeness, and there's someone listening and someone there with you. Mm-hmm. It's just such grace. It's so beautiful.
I agree. And I think, it just makes me think of the industrialization of our world, and what where we are now. We were talking earlier, just technology, and how we feel like we can't do anything without it. And I feel like we've gotten so far, and maybe I should not say we, but me, I'll give myself as an example, getting so far into the world, and forgetting that I am a human. I'm also a creature of this world, and I am connected inherently to this world. And we just have to, open ourselves up to reconnect back with that. And it's, the possibilities there.
Oh, yes, that's the key. It's it's there, it's possible.
Yeah.
And once I think that's just so profound. And when you were speaking to the parts that feel so terrible and feel like they can't go on, or feel just so depressed or so anxious or terrified or heavy and dark and alone, really, that there is a possibility for that to shift. And even if, I did this, it was really incredible one time. I was in this somatic class, and it was a lot about, the teacher was a dancer, and she had us make a dance based on how we felt when we felt joy. So we did a little, it was a few movements. What does joy feel like? Make some gestures. And then we were in partners, and it was have the person learn your dance, and then you're going to do it together. So we did that. And then she had us make a dance of how it feels when you're feeling shame, and let that express into gesture or movement. And, not choreography, you don't even have to know what dance means. Just really letting your body be in a dance of shame and how that expresses it through movement. And then she had us have our which is already kind of an intense joy. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I can flow with that. But to allow shame to kind of move through you and express, that's a journey into that quality of feeling. And it didn't feel good. And then to have the partner join and learn that dance was one of the most profound experiences of my life, because it was actually more beautiful to be connected in an experience of shame than it was to be dancing alone in my feeling of joy. So wow. It was deep. And I was like, whoa. So that is what I think that we're kind of talking about, is like to bring, it's not even necessarily needing to, change anything, but to be able to bring a quality and a feeling of true connection into those dark, isolated places. Then, shit's going to start to flow and you're going to be able to move and things are going to transform. So it really is some deep work that.
Yeah. And I feel like what you're saying too, which I think is an important highlight, is that, there's beauty in healing with others, that you don't have to do it alone. It's a lot harder. Like you said, the dance was a lot harder when you did it by yourself, but when you brought in, another being, another energy into that, it made it less manageable. And so I think that the take back that I'm getting from that is that anybody that is experiencing anything, you don't have to do it alone. You just need to find, that safe space, that safe person, that safe energy to bring into yourself and go through it together. It's a lot easier to do it.
It is. And I just was writing on Instagram the other day about, like, I was having a conversation with one of my mentors, who's one of the safest people that I know. And we were talking about how there's, wisdom and discernment there's courage and there's the wisdom of discernment in that process, because, not everybody is safe, and not everyone's going to be able to stay present with you while you're expressing your truth. And so to have the courage to seek out connection is really, really just like a skill and important to cultivate, but then to have the wisdom of being able to discern what does safety even feel like, and who is the person that can offer me that. And many of us have never felt that in our lives. And it's important to know that there are people out there who can be safe with us, and that we have to keep trying to find them. And we also have to forgive ourselves when we think that someone is safe, and then we find out, like, wait a minute, I started to talk about how I feel and it got awkward, or they started to something got weird, or I got scared, and they weren't able to sustain that connection and reach towards me and assure me, like, I'm right here with you. Yeah. So we can forgive ourselves for those moments. And the beautiful thing is, for anybody who's listening, it's like the horses are right here. I'm not a gatekeeper to the horses. They're here. You can call out to them. You can come I try to make accessible work online. But literally, you can start asking the horses to come into your dreams. You can start to just ask for that support to come, because sometimes no human's going to be safe enough, and you need to have that communication. And you can do it with we experience it all the time with, like, maybe our pets in our house, our dogs, our cats, the trees, like you said. So it's okay to speak to the rivers. It's okay to go and find that safe space and then keep looking for humans that can hold you. So I love that you brought that up, because I think that's really important for us to keep reminding ourselves, because it gets, when you're in that place where you feel feel real bad, like, that's not a joke, that's scary, like, it's bad, and you forget everything good that ever happened.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
It's good to keep talking about it.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the things that you mentioned was the attention of the horses and how they are so attentive to you. Why do you think that that's important, that we can take some education from that and use that in our own life for attention? Why is attention so important in our day-to-day lives?
Ooh, wow, that's such a good question. Where my mind is going is kind of on a theme of, it's actually about yoga, really. Because yoga means, you can look at the word yoga in many ways, but we can look at it as translating to union. And so our true nature is this state of connection and oneness. And the beauty is that we can, manifest in these very different forms and still experience that true that truth of who we really are as being one with all of life. Yes. And so when we are able to pay attention to one another, and in the physical body, something happens, which is a process of attunement, or like literally our hearts are going to start beating at a similar rate to the heart of the being that we're with. And they have science so that shows, like, when you're with a horse, their hearts are, the electromagnetic field of their heart is so big, and they're actually resonating at a frequency that's like where we go. And at some of the deepest levels of meditation, when they hook up sensors to people's hearts, horses are already there. So they start to bring all of our like the waves and the energy and the frequency of us. They start to bring us into this slower, like you were talking about slowness. They start to slow us down and bring us to their level. And so when we are both resonating together in the same place, and we start to feel that sense of connection, it's just beautiful. Like, that's the truth. That's who we are. That's where I feel like we are desiring to go. And so the more we learn how to listen to each other and pay attention to each other in ways that are, consensual and are filled with respect and sovereignty, then we get to experience this beautiful, I think it's being sovereign and being one. And it's just like, that's just, I don't even know what a word to describe it, but I think that's what we are. That's who we are. And so when we get to be congruent with who we really are, it feels the best.
Oh, I love that. It's so important that we just take a moment to just like be with ourselves and the depth that is who we are, and really truly, not living in a shell. And I think what you're doing, I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm like, I want what this girl's got. Like, what would you recommend for anyone that's like, I just feel like I need something a little different in my life. Like, maybe you have some healing that you feel like needs to happen, or maybe you don't, but you're just like, I want to be, I want this, like, there's something missing in my life and I don't know what it is, but this sounds really interesting to me. What were some of the steps that you took to get to be like where you are? And I always like to highlight that, like, a lot of these journeys are lifelong journeys, that you will be doing this work for the rest of your life. There is no like finish line. At least I feel like, and I think it's safe to say that most of the guests that I've had on agree with that statement, that it is, it's work that you do for the rest of your life, but it's enjoyable work because you're figuring out who you are, and you're just doing that personal growth. And I think, what would be some advice that you would give?
Well, my whole thing is, I feel in complete service to the horses. So I feel like that they are, I'm into like inviting people to connect with them. And so my work, I'm really working on making things accessible and affordable. I'm actually going to start this month a monthly storytelling and meditation hour that's just affordable, where people can come, and I'm going to lead a little bit of meditation, and it's going to, it'll be on Zoom. So I'm really into this, and I've experienced this place where we can meet online and be in community, but it can be a little bit private, because when we get vulnerable, we're not going to do breakout rooms. We can maybe share in the chat if we feel like it when I give a certain prompt, but there's space to be together, for me to bring in the energy of the horse, and then guide people in some meditation, and for them to just have space to rest, maybe curl up. They can turn their camera off if they want to, and just spend an hour in this energy. And I obviously will continue to just share the wisdom that I've been gifted. So that's one way that's just really accessible, that I would love to invite anybody to come to. And I'm going to be putting up I'll send you the link to it.
Yeah, most definitely. 'Cause I will put that in the show notes for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I need that.
Yeah, I think that's a super easy and beautiful way. And I'd love anybody to come to that, because this feels like just something that doesn't belong to me. It's something that is beautiful to share.
Yeah.
And then there's books, like I mentioned, Carolyn Resnick's book, Naked Liberty, and Linda Cohen of The Tao of Equus, and Tao is spelled T-A-O. So those books, if people are interested in, like, they will bring you into the frequency of the horse in a way that I really appreciate. Again, Kelsey Dale John, her work I just really resonate with her work. And in terms of just people's personal desire for growth and expansion and transformation, and I think that listening to our feelings is just our body. From all my teachers and the people who have been my greatest teachers have also been like helping me heal. They have been just listening and helping me listen to my body and listening to my desire, listening to my pain, and finding places where I can explore those frequencies as they begin to unfold. And then wisdom always comes at feelings. So getting places where you can be more in your body, and that is often hard when you have trauma. So where are the places where it feels good to be in your body? A lot of times it has to do with when there's sound or when there's like fun connection, like a horse or like a river, something that gives you enough joy and beauty and harmony that you can tolerate being present. And then beginning to start to dialogue with those places and see what happens when you bring your challenges to those places and your longings for joy, and start to dialogue with your body and with the body of the earth. I think that is what I would recommend.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's incredible. Like such, actionable steps. And, I just want to mention again that, if anyone is out there and they're just, they're thinking to themselves, okay, I want to do some of this work, but then sometimes it may get tough. And then that's where, people like Jamila and people like Caitlin. And I mean, there's such a huge community of people out there that can help you do that work with you. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's important. Again, just highlighting the fact that you don't have to do it alone. Some of this stuff does require internal work that you have to do alone. But there's so many communities out there. There's tons of people out there that are just waiting to help you get through it. And so,
totally. Yeah. Because once you get that experience, all you want to do is just like,
give me more.
Just be there for people. And because it's so meaningful when you have somebody come for you and say like, yo, I see you and I want to be with you where you are, because it doesn't feel good. And I don't want to run away from that. I want to lean in and I want to be close to you and in your truth, even when you feel awful. To have an animal do that, sometimes it's easier first. And when you get to the place where you can have humans who are interested in that, and that's what Caitlin, oh my God, I love her because she's just like, she's done so much work. She can talk about shit that we can't even say certain things. Yeah. That we like that are related to trauma to the body. We can't even we don't even talk about the hard topics because they're so scary for everyone to really hold. So when you get someone who can really just name it and feel comfortable in the energies of that and can be present.
Yes.
Healing gave me some serious healing. Everyone who is ready should definitely look up Caitlin.
And they were here like having a Caitlin party, because if you guys haven't listened to her episode, I highly recommend it. It's back in season 2, Caitlin D, integrative pelvic care. And I mean, like, I got healing just from being in a conversation with her. I was like, holy crap, like, I've got so much shit that I need to do, like, but I can do it. Like, she gave me the energy and the power to do that. And so, and just like what I'm getting from you, I'm over here like, I'm terrified of horses, but I got some friends that's got some horses. Maybe I could just be like, hey, just come over and be in that presence, be in that energy. I think it's a beautiful thing to try out. So
that's a great way if you do have access to horses.
Yeah.
One way that's really awesome to start to connect with them is to just sit with them in the silence. And I like to start to notice their breath by looking at their nostrils. And there's I'm also going to put this, I guess I'll put this on my website, because there's this woman named Sharon Wilsey, I think is how you pronounce her name. And I hope I'm getting that right. She broke down like all these different examples of like many ways horses breathe and greet each other. And when you start to like copy them and notice them, it'll bring you into some states where you're just like, oh man, here we go. So I would love to hear if you have experiences,
for sure,
how it goes.
And like I mentioned, I will make sure that I connect all of Jamila's information in the show notes so that you guys can give her a follow through her journey of helping others, and then sharing some of her personal insights and experiences, and getting on that new thing that you've got. Honestly, I feel like I could keep this interview going. We could just keep talking.
I know it's fun talking to you. Thank you for having me. I feel like I learned a lot about a lot of things to just get talk.
It's incredible what happens when you start talking, and then you learn a lot about yourself. And then I'm always, my brain, I'm like, it's a sponge. Give me all the information. I want to learn more, and then I want to share it with my listeners so that they can take that information and hopefully it inspires growth and transformation in their own life. But thank you so much for being on today. I'm honestly, it was an honor to talk to you. I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. You're such an incredible presence, and it really feels good you're great. You're like, your heart is so present, and it feels really beautiful to get to connect with you and talk with you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for supporting us with your listen today. I want to thank my guest again so much for sharing her powerful story of transformation with us. If you're interested in following Jamila or connecting with her, I have made sure to link all of her information in the show notes for you. Be sure to check out the art that goes along with today's episode. You can do so on our website at iempower.club. If you personally feel connected to the story and you would like to purchase one of those limited edition prints to go along with it as a reminder of your own power, you can do so on our website. There will be a limited number of copies of those available. Those sales go to support the podcast and help us to continue to move forward and bring you these powerful stories each week. If you like this episode or found value in it, please let us know by giving us a thumbs up or sharing us with a friend. Make sure to follow us on all of our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at I Am Power Club, and of course, YouTube at Jessica James. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Am Power. See you then.